I died alone in a hospital bed at 23, my phone clutched in my hand, waiting for a call that never came. The pneumonia had ravaged my lungs for 3 days. I'd texted my mother 17 times, I'd called my sister 9 times, I'd even messaged my father, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, begging someone, anyone, to come. The nurses said I needed someone to sign my discharge papers to take me home to make sure I had help. But my phone stayed silent except for the notifications I could see lighting up the screen. My sister's Instagram stories from a spa day with mom, Dad's Facebook post about his stepdaughter's college acceptance. When the fever spiked to 104 and my lungs finally gave out, my last thought wasn't of regret or fear, it was rage. Pure, crystallized rage that they couldn't spare 2 hours to save my life. Then I woke up in my childhood bedroom, 14 years old again, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling when I was 8. My first coherent thought was, I'm not going to waste this chance being their doormat again. The date on my phone, an old model I hadn't seen in years, read September 3rd, 2016. I was 2 weeks away from starting high school. In my previous life, this year had marked the beginning of my systematic erasure from the family. My sister Chelsea had just turned 17, had just gotten her license, had just started dating Marcus Trent, the son of a real estate mogul. My mother had started her health journey that was really just an excuse to spend every waking moment at yoga studios and juice bars with other wealthy mothers, networking her way into Chelsea's future. And I had started becoming invisible. I sat up in bed, my lungs clear and strong, my body young and healthy, and I smiled. Because I remembered everything. Every forgotten birthday, every canceled plan, every time they'd chosen Chelsea over me. Every time my mother had sighed and said, "Can't you just take the bus?" When Chelsea got a car for her 16th birthday and I got a gift card to Target. Every time my father had sent child support checks with Chelsea's name on them, and nothing for me, because technically, I wasn't even his biological daughter, just the product of my mother's first marriage to a man who'd died in a car accident when I was 3. But more importantly, I remembered what was coming. I remembered that in 6 months, my grandmother, my father's mother, who I'd never been allowed to meet, would die. And I remembered that 3 days before my death in my previous life, I'd received a letter from a lawyer informing me that grandmother Marianne had left her entire estate to me. $12 million, a penthouse in Manhattan, stock portfolios that would triple in value over the next decade. My mother had intercepted that letter. I'd found it years later, hidden in her desk, after I'd been evicted from my apartment and had come crawling back hoping for help. She'd forged my signature and had the inheritance redirected to a trust fund with Chelsea as the beneficiary, claiming I was mentally unfit to handle such wealth. By the time I discovered the truth, it was too late to fight it. I was too sick, too poor, too broken. Not this time. I got out of bed and looked at myself in the mirror. 14-year-old me was skinny, with frizzy brown hair and braces. I looked nothing like Chelsea, who had inherited our mother's blonde hair and delicate features. I looked like my dead father. Dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, a face that would grow beautiful with age but was awkward now, all angles and uncertainty. In my previous life, I'd spent years trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less of an inconvenience. I'd taken the bus everywhere while Chelsea got a BMW. I'd worked 3 jobs through college while Chelsea's tuition at NYU was paid in full. I'd eaten ramen for dinner while they went to Michelin-starred restaurants. Never again. The abuse had started so gradually, I hadn't even recognized it as abuse until it was too late. When I was 9, my mother remarried. Richard Patterson was everything my dead father wasn't. Wealthy, connected, ambitious. He had a daughter from his first marriage, Chelsea, who was 12 and already beautiful in that effortless way that some girls are. My mother saw in Chelsea everything she'd wanted me to be: poised, popular, perfect. The shift was subtle at first. My mother started spending more time with Chelsea, teaching her about makeup and fashion, while I was told I was too young for such things. When I turned 10 and asked for ballet lessons like Chelsea had, I was told we couldn't afford it, even though Richard had just bought Chelsea a horse. By the time I was 12, the pattern was established. Chelsea was the golden child. I was the burden. Richard never adopted me, never even pretended to see me as his daughter. I was Sarah's daughter from her previous life, a reminder of the poor man she'd married before she'd learned to aim higher. At family dinners, he'd ask Chelsea about her day, her friends, her dreams. He'd look through me like I was furniture. My mother didn't defend me. She'd transformed herself into the perfect trophy wife, and that meant prioritizing Richard's daughter over her own. When I came home crying because girls at school were bullying me, she told me to toughen up, and then spent an hour on the phone consoling Chelsea about a boy who hadn't texted her back. When I was 13, I asked if I could join the family vacation to Europe. My mother had looked at me with genuine confusion. "Sweetie, this is a family trip. You'd be bored." They took Chelsea to Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. I spent 2 weeks with a neighbor who felt sorry for me. That was the year I stopped calling Richard Dad and started calling him by his first name. Nobody noticed. My real father's family, the Harringtons, had been wealthy once, old money that had dwindled but never entirely disappeared. My grandmother, Mary Ann, had disapproved of my father's marriage to my mother, seeing her as a gold digger. When my father died, Mary Ann had tried to stay in my life, but my mother had refused all contact, angry at the implication that she wasn't good enough for the Harrington name. I'd grown up knowing I had a grandmother I'd never met. A whole side of my family kept from me because of my mother's pride and bitterness. In my previous life, I hadn't learned the full story until after I turned 21, when Mary Ann's lawyer had tracked me down to tell me she was dying and wanted to see me. By then, I was so beaten down, so convinced of my own worthlessness that I'd been too afraid to reach out. What if she was disappointed in me? What if I wasn't good enough for the Harrington name either? So I'd waited, and she'd died, and she'd left me everything anyway, because I was all she had left of her son. But my mother had made sure I never saw a penny of it. This time, I knew better. This time, I had a plan. The first thing I did was wait. I couldn't contact my grandmother yet. I was only 14, and any attempt to reach out would be immediately shut down by my mother. But I could prepare. I could become someone my grandmother would be proud of. Someone strong enough to fight for what was rightfully mine. I started with school. In my previous life, I'd been a decent student, but I'd never pushed myself, never seen the point when everything I achieved was overshadowed by Chelsea's effortless popularity. This time, I threw myself into my studies with a single-minded focus that shocked my teachers. Within 2 months, I was at the top of my class. I joined the debate team, the math club, and the school newspaper. I tutored other students for extra money, saving every penny. When my mother forgot to buy me new clothes for school, I didn't complain. I bought them myself with my tutoring money and took satisfaction in my independence. I watched Chelsea struggle through her junior year, more concerned with her boyfriend and her Instagram followers than her grades. I watched my mother fret over Chelsea's future, hiring expensive tutors and test prep coaches. I watched Richard throw money at the problem, as if enough cash could turn Chelsea into Harvard material, and I said nothing. I asked for nothing. I made myself completely self-sufficient. The second thing I did was document everything. Every forgotten birthday, every missed parent-teacher conference, every time they went on a family vacation without me, I wrote it down. I saved text messages. I kept receipts. In my previous life, I'd been too naive to realize I'd need proof of the neglect. This time, I was building a case. When Christmas came and Chelsea opened presents for 2 hours while I received a $50 Amazon gift card, I took photos. When my mother threw Chelsea a massive sweet 17 party and forgot my 14th birthday entirely, I documented that too. I wasn't planning to use this evidence yet, but I would need it eventually when the inheritance came into play. My mother wouldn't be able to claim she was a loving parent who only had my best interests at heart when I had years of proof showing otherwise. The third thing I did was teach myself everything I could about finance, law, and estate planning. I spent hours in the library, reading books about trusts and inheritances and legal guardianship. I learned about emancipation, about what rights I'd have when I turned 18, about how to protect assets from predatory family members. I joined online forums where people discussed dealing with narcissistic parents and financial abuse. I became an expert in my own liberation. The turning point came in March, 6 months after my rebirth. I was in the school library during lunch period researching investment strategies when the librarian approached me with a strange look on her face. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you. He says he's a family lawyer." My heart stopped. This was it. This was earlier than my previous life. Marianne hadn't died yet. Why was a lawyer here? I followed the librarian to the private study room where a distinguished man in his 60s was waiting. He had kind eyes and an expensive suit. Miss Chen, I'm Robert Morrison, your grandmother's attorney. May we speak privately? The librarian left, and I sat down across from him, my hands shaking. Is she? Your grandmother is dying, he said gently. She has perhaps 2 months left. She's asked me to find you and extend an invitation to visit her. She would very much like to meet you before she passes. In my previous life, this conversation had happened over the phone and I'd been too afraid to respond. This time, I looked him in the eye and said, Yes, I want to meet her, but my mother won't allow it. Mr. Morrison smiled slightly. Your grandmother anticipated that. She's prepared to file for visitation rights if necessary. But she was hoping you might be willing to reach out on your own, perhaps visit after school without informing your mother, at least initially. It was risky. My mother would be furious if she found out. But I was 14, old enough to make my own choices about who I saw, even if I wasn't old enough to make it legally binding. Tell me when and where, I said. Grandmother Marianne lived in a brownstone in the Upper East Side that had been in the Harrington family for 4 generations. When I arrived after school that Thursday, my hands were sweating and my heart was pounding. The door opened and a nurse led me to a sitting room where an elderly woman sat in a wheelchair by the window. She was thin, her skin papery, but her eyes, dark like mine, like my father's, were sharp and clear. Sarah, she whispered, and tears immediately filled those sharp eyes. Oh, my dear girl, you look just like him. I crossed the room and knelt beside her, wheelchair, and she took my hands in hers. Her grip was weak but warm. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry I let your mother keep you from me. I was angry at her for so long and I punished you for her mistakes. Can you forgive a foolish old woman? I felt tears burning my own eyes. There's nothing to forgive. I'm here now. We talked for hours. She asked me about my life and I told her everything, the neglect, the favoritism, the way I'd been erased from my own family. I showed her the documentation I'd been keeping. I told her about my plans for the future, my determination to never be dependent on my mother again. She listened with a mixture of pride and sorrow. You're stronger than your father was, she said finally. He was a sweet boy, but he let people walk over him. You have his kindness, but you have steel in you too. That's good. You'll need it. Then she told me about the inheritance. Everything I have will be yours, she said. The house, the money, the investments. My lawyer has drafted an ironclad will. But Sarah, you need to understand. Your mother will fight you for it. She'll claim you're too young, that she should control it as your guardian. She'll try to take it from you. I know, I said. I stopped, then decided to trust her. Grandmother, what I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I need you to believe me. I told her about my death, about the rebirth, about the future I'd already lived, where my mother had stolen my inheritance and left me to die alone. I expected her to think I was crazy. Instead, she studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The Harrington women have always had something extra, she said quietly. My mother claimed she could see the future in her dreams. My grandmother said she could speak to the dead. I never had the gift myself, but I always believed. And looking at you now, seeing the old soul in those young eyes. Yes, I believe you. Relief flooded through me. I wasn't alone in this. Then you understand why I need to be careful, I said. Why I can't let her know about any of this until I'm old enough to fight her in court. I have a better idea, Grandmother said, and she smiled, a sharp, cunning smile that reminded me we shared blood. We're going to make it impossible for her to touch your inheritance. Mr. Morrison is the best estate lawyer in New York, and he owes the Harrington family several favors. We're going to set up a trust that your mother cannot break, cannot contest, cannot touch. And we're going to do it before I die, so there's no question of my mental competency. Over the next 6 weeks, I visited my grandmother 3 times a week. My mother thought I was at debate practice or tutoring sessions. I'd gotten so good at being invisible that she never checked. During those visits, Grandmother Marianne and Mr. Morrison taught me everything I needed to know about managing wealth. They set up a trust that would give me access to a monthly stipend at 16, full access at 18, and complete control at 21. They named Mr. Morrison as the trustee, with strict instructions that my mother was never to have any access or control. More importantly, they documented everything. Every visit was videotaped, showing that I was mature, intelligent, and fully capable of understanding what I was inheriting. We built an unshakable case that this was my grandmother's explicit wish, made while she was of sound mind. "Your mother is going to claim I manipulated you, or that you manipulated me," Grandmother said during one of our last visits. She was very weak by then, her voice barely a whisper. "She's going to say terrible things about both of us. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about dying alone in that hospital bed, about the years of neglect and casual cruelty, about watching my sister live the life that should have been partly mine. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." Grandmother Marianne died on May 2nd, 2017. I was 14 years old. She left me $12 million, a brownstone in Manhattan, and a portfolio of investments that Mr. Morrison assured me would be worth $50 million by the time I was 30. She also left me something more valuable, a voice message recorded a week before her death. "Sarah," her voice said, thin and tired but clear, "if you're listening to this, then I'm gone. And I want you to know that you were the greatest joy of my final months. Getting to know you, seeing the incredible young woman you're becoming, it was worth every moment of pain. Your mother will try to take this from you. Don't let her. You are a Harrington. You are my granddaughter. And you deserve every penny of this inheritance, not because of me, but because you've earned it through your own strength and character. Be brave, my darling girl, and know that I'm proud of you." I listened to that message 20 times the night I learned she'd died. Then I saved it in 3 different places and prepared for war. The bomb dropped 2 days after the funeral. I hadn't been allowed to attend, of course. My mother had claimed it was a private family affair and that my presence would be inappropriate. I'd stayed home from school, sitting in my room, and waited. The call came at 2:37 p.m. I heard my mother's voice from downstairs, shrill and disbelieving. "What do you mean she left everything to Sarah? That's impossible. She doesn't even know Sarah." Then Chelsea's voice whining, "Mom, that doesn't make sense. Why would some old woman leave millions to her?" Richard's voice was lower, calculating. "There has to be a way to contest this. She's 14. She can't possibly manage an estate of that size." I walked downstairs slowly, my face carefully neutral. My mother was standing in the kitchen, her face red, her phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her eyes widened with something between rage and calculation. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, then hung up. "Sarah, sit down. We need to talk." I remained standing. "About what?" "About your grandmother's will." Her voice was carefully controlled now, saccharine. "Honey, I know you're upset about not getting to know her, but this inheritance, it's too much for someone your age to handle. The responsible thing to do is to let me manage it for you until you're older." "No," I said simply. Her expression cracked. "Excuse me?" I said no. "The trust is already established. Mr. Morrison is the trustee. You have no legal access to the money." "Sarah, don't be ridiculous. I'm your mother. I know what's best for you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw what I'd been too young to see in my previous life. She didn't love me. She never had. I was just an asset to be managed, a problem to be solved, and now I was a windfall she thought she deserved more than I did. "You forgot to pick me up from the hospital," I said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "In my previous life, I was dying of pneumonia, and I called you 17 times. I begged you to come, and you were too busy at a spa with Chelsea to answer." I smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "But that hasn't happened yet, has it? That won't happen for another 9 years, and this time, when I'm sick, I won't call you. I won't call any of you, because I've learned my lesson." My mother stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What are you talking about? Previous life? Sarah, are you feeling okay? Maybe we should take you to see someone. Don't, I said sharply. Don't pretend to care about my mental health as an excuse to get control of my inheritance. Grandmother Marianne knew exactly what she was doing. She knew what kind of mother you are, and she made sure you'd never be able to steal from me again. Again? My mother's voice went shrill. I have never stolen from you. Not yet, I said. But you would have. You would have forged my signature and redirected everything to Chelsea, claiming I was mentally unfit. You would have let me die alone and poor while you spent my inheritance on your perfect daughter. Chelsea had appeared in the doorway, her phone in her hand, recording. Good. Let her record. Mom, she's crazy, Chelsea said. We should call someone. Maybe she needs to be hospitalized. I laughed. You can try, but Mr. Morrison has hours of footage of me with Grandmother Marianne showing that I'm perfectly sane and competent. You want to fight this in court? Go ahead. I have documentation of every time you forgot my birthday, every vacation I wasn't invited to, every parent-teacher conference you skipped. I have proof of years of neglect. And when a judge sees that and then sees you trying to steal a dying woman's gift to her granddaughter, how do you think that's going to look? The room went silent. Richard spoke for the first time. Sarah, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. No one wants to steal from you. We just want to help you. Manage this responsibly. You couldn't even manage to treat me like a human being, I said. Why would I trust you with my money? I turned and walked back upstairs, my heart pounding but my head high. Behind me, I heard my mother start to cry. Fake, manipulative tears that might have worked on me once. But I was done being manipulated. The war had begun. Over the next 2 years, my mother tried everything to get control of the inheritance. She hired lawyers to contest the will. Mr. Morrison destroyed them in court, presenting the video evidence of my grandmother's clear wishes and my obvious competency. She tried to have me declared mentally incompetent, claiming my talk of previous lives was evidence of delusion. I presented the recordings to my therapist, a woman Mr. Morrison had carefully vetted, who testified that I was using metaphor and storytelling to express my feelings about family neglect, not claiming literal reincarnation. The petition was denied. She tried to claim that my grandmother had unduly influenced me, turned me against my loving family. I presented my documentation of neglect, photos, texts, receipts, diary entries. The judge was not sympathetic. Every attack failed. Every manipulation backfired. My mother's reputation began to suffer as word spread through her social circles about the inheritance battle. People started to whisper about the daughter she'd neglected, the inheritance she was trying to steal. Meanwhile, I thrived. At 16, I got my first stipend from the trust, $10,000 a month. I used it to hire my own therapist, to buy my own car, to make myself completely independent from my family. I moved out of my bedroom and into the guest house in the backyard, essentially living separately while still technically residing at home. I graduated high school 2 years early with a perfect GPA and acceptance letters from every Ivy League school. I chose Columbia because it was in New York, close to Mr. Morrison and the Harrington brownstone that would be mine when I turned 18. Chelsea barely graduated, despite my mother's desperate attempts to buy her way into success. She ended up at a state school where she majored in partying and Instagram. I turned 18 3 months before starting at Columbia. On my birthday, Mr. Morrison handed me the keys to my grandmother's brownstone and full access to my inheritance. Happy birthday, Miss Harrington, he said, using my grandmother's name. Your grandmother would be proud of who you've become. I stood in the foyer of the brownstone, my brownstone, and felt something loosen in my chest. I was free. Truly free. I never went back to my mother's house. I had movers pack up my few belongings from the guest house while the family was out. I left no note, no forwarding address beyond Mr. Morrison's office. If they wanted to reach me, they could try, but I wasn't holding my breath. College was everything I dreamed it would be. I majored in finance and economics, learning everything I could about managing and growing wealth. I made friends, real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not for what I could provide. I dated, I went to parties, I lived the life I'd been denied in my previous existence. I also invested. Using the knowledge from my previous life, I made strategic investments that paid off spectacularly. Bitcoin, Tesla, Amazon. Companies I knew would explode in value over the next decade. By the time I was 20, my 12 million had grown to 30 million. By 22, it was 70 million. I donated generously to charities that helped neglected children. I funded scholarships for students from abusive homes. I used my wealth to make sure other people didn't suffer the way I had. And I waited. Because I knew what was coming. I knew that eventually my mother would need me. People like her always came crawling back when they needed something. The call came when I was 23, exactly the age I'd been when I died in my previous life. My mother's voice on the phone was older, tired, desperate. "Sarah, it's Mom. Please don't hang up." I didn't hang up. I waited. "I need your help," she said, and I could hear her pride cracking with every word. Richard left me. He's marrying someone younger, someone who can give him the perfect family he always wanted. The prenup, I didn't read it carefully enough. I'm getting almost nothing. And Chelsea, she's in trouble. She got involved with some bad people, made some bad investments. She's in debt, Sarah. Serious debt. The kind of debt that dangerous people collect on, I finished calmly. I know, I saw the news reports about her boyfriend's arrest. Silence on the other end. "You're calling to ask me for money," I said. "After everything you did. After years of neglect and abuse and theft. You're asking me to save you." "You're my daughter," she whispered. "Please. I know I wasn't always the best mother, but—" "You were never a mother to me," I said. "Not in any way that mattered. You forgot to pick me up from the hospital when I was dying. You stole my inheritance. You chose your stepdaughter over me every single day of my life. And now you want me to rescue you from the consequences of your own choices?" "Sarah, please." "No," I said simply. "You made your choice. Chelsea was always your priority. Let her save you. Oh, wait. She can't, can she? Because you raised her to be just like you. Selfish, manipulative, entitled, and now you're both paying the price." "I'm your mother," she screamed, her desperation finally breaking through. "No, FS," I said. "Marianne Harrington was more of a mother to me in 6 weeks than you were in 18 years. You were just the woman who gave birth to me and then spent the rest of my childhood making me wish she hadn't." I hung up. She called back 17 times. I didn't answer, just like she hadn't answered. When I'd needed her. The poetry of it was not lost on me. 6 months later, I received an email from a private investigator I'd hired to keep tabs on my former family. The email contained several attachments: photos, financial documents, police reports. My mother had declared bankruptcy. She'd lost the house, the cars, everything. She was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, working as a receptionist. Chelsea had been arrested for fraud. Something to do with her boyfriend's cryptocurrency scheme. She was facing 5 to 10 years in prison. Richard had married a woman 20 years younger and had just announced they were expecting twins. His social media was full of photos of his new family, a cyanide guy, his fresh start. None of them had mentioned my mother or Chelsea in months. They'd been erased just as thoroughly as I had been. I looked at the photos for a long time. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, no anger. Just a distant, clinical interest, like reading about strangers in the newspaper. I deleted the email and went back to my life. Because that's what I had now. A life. A real life. Full of people who loved me, work that fulfilled me, wealth that gave me security and freedom. I'd spent my second chance becoming everything my family had told me I could never be. Successful, independent, happy, and I'd done it all without them. I'm 25 now. I live in my grandmother's brownstone, though I've renovated it extensively. The sitting room where she and I first met is now my office, where I manage my investments and charitable foundation. I never married, though I've had relationships. I'm in no hurry. I've learned that being alone is better than being with people who make you feel lonely. I've never spoken to my mother or Chelsea again. As far as I'm concerned, they're strangers who happen to share a house with me for a few years. Nothing more. Sometimes I think about my previous life. dying alone in that hospital bed, my phone in my hand, waiting for people who would never come. And then I think about how I spent my afternoon today, having lunch with friends from Colombia, then meeting with the board of my foundation, then coming home to my beautiful brownstone and my beautiful life. I think about the message my grandmother left me. You deserve every penny of this inheritance, not because of me, but because you've earned it through your own strength and character. She was right. I did earn it. Not through being born into the right family, or being the favorite child, or playing the game my mother wanted me to play. I earned it by surviving, by refusing to break, by being strong enough to seize my second chance and build something better. Last week, I received a letter from Chelsea. She's in prison now, serving her sentence. The letter was full of apologies and excuses, begging me to help her appeal, to hire a better lawyer, to send money for commissary. I read it once, then burned it in my fireplace. There are no more chances, no more rescues, no more phone calls that go unanswered while I'm dying. This life is mine. I built it from nothing, from less than nothing, from the ashes of a previous life where I'd been thrown away like garbage, and no one will ever take it from me again. Sometimes late at night, I stand in my grandmother's sitting room, my sitting room, and I remember that moment when Mr. Morrison walked into my school library and offered me a chance to know her. In my previous life, I'd been too afraid to take that chance, too beaten down, too convinced of my own worthlessness. This time, I'd been brave enough to say yes. That single decision changed everything. I built my empire on that one moment of courage, and every day since then, I've made the choice to keep building, to keep growing, to keep becoming more than anyone thought I could be. My mother forgot to pick me up from the hospital. She forgot my birthdays, my achievements, my existence. But I never forgot. And I never will. Because forgetting is how you lose yourself. Remembering is how you reclaim your power. I remembered everything. And that memory became my weapon, my shield, and my salvation. Today, I received an invitation to my 10-year college reunion. I RSVP'd, yes. I'm bringing my partner, a kind, brilliant person I met through my foundation work. Someone who sees me for who I am, not for what I can provide. The invitation included an update form where alumni could share their accomplishments. I filled it out honestly. CEO of Harrington Foundation, net worth $150 million, published author of 3 books on financial literacy for women, board member of 5 nonprofit organizations, donor to dozens of charities. And in the space where it asked about family, I wrote, "Found family is the only family that matters." Because that's the truth I've learned in this second life. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Loyalty does. Showing up does. My mother had all the biology in the world, but she never showed up. She never loved me the way a mother should. She never put me first, not even once. My grandmother barely knew me, but in those 6 weeks, she gave me everything. Not just money, though that helped, but belief, validation. The message that I mattered, that I deserved good things, that I was worth fighting for, that was the real inheritance. The money was just a tool. The belief was what saved me. Sometimes people ask me if I'm happy. The answer is yes. Unreservedly, completely yes. I'm happy in ways I never could have imagined in my previous life. I'm happy in ways that have nothing to do with money or revenge or proving anyone wrong. I'm happy because I wake up every morning in a home I own, surrounded by things I chose, living a life I built with my own 2 hands. I'm happy because I'm free. Free from the desperate need for approval from people who would never give it. Free from the belief that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. I'm happy because I learned the most important lesson anyone can learn. The only person who needs to believe in you is you. My mother didn't believe in me. My stepfather didn't believe in me. My stepsister certainly didn't believe in me. But I believed in me. And in the end, that was the only belief that mattered. Last month, I established a new scholarship program called the Second Chance Scholarship. It's for young women from neglectful or abusive families who are working to build their own futures despite the obstacles. The application doesn't ask for grades or test scores or impressive extracurriculars. It asks 2 questions. What have you survived? What will you build with your second chance? The responses I've received have been heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. Young women who've survived horrors I can barely imagine, who are still fighting, still dreaming, still believing they deserve better. I fund 100 scholarships a year. full ride to any college they choose, plus a monthly stipend, plus access to therapy and mentorship programs. I'm giving them what my grandmother gave me, a real chance. Not charity, not pity, but a genuine opportunity to build something extraordinary from the wreckage of their past. Some people say I'm too generous, that I'm going to run out of money if I keep giving it away like this. I always smile when I hear that because they don't understand. Money is a tool. I have more than I could spend in 5 lifetimes. What's the point of hoarding it when I could use it to change lives? My mother saw money as a measure of worth, something to cling to and guard jealously. I see it as power, and power is meant to be used. I use mine to make sure other girls don't die alone in hospital beds waiting for parents who will never come. 3 years ago, I published my first book, Forgotten: How to Thrive After Family Neglect. It became a bestseller within 6 months. I didn't write it for the money. God knows I didn't need it. I wrote it because I kept meeting women like me. Women who'd been erased by their own families, women who'd been told they were too much or not enough or simply invisible, women who'd spent years believing they deserved the neglect they'd received. The book laid out everything I'd learned in both my lives: how to recognize emotional abuse, how to document it, how to protect yourself legally and financially, how to build a life independent of people who should have loved you but didn't. But more than that, it told my story, not the rebirth part. I wasn't ready to be that vulnerable, and honestly, who would believe it? But everything else. The forgotten birthdays, the missed milestones, the systematic erasure of my existence while my stepsister was celebrated. The response was overwhelming. I received thousands of emails from readers who saw themselves in my story. Daughters who'd been replaced by stepmothers, children, sons who'd been abandoned for new families, people who'd spent their entire lives wondering why they weren't good enough for their own parents to love them. I answered every single email personally. It took me 6 months. To each one, I said the same thing. It wasn't your fault. You deserved better, and you still deserve better. It's not too late to build the life you should have had. Some of them took that message to heart. I've watched dozens of my readers transform their lives, go back to school, leave abusive situations, start businesses, reconnect with their own worth. Those success stories mean more to me than any amount of money in my investment portfolio. My second book, The Arithmetic of Worth, focused on financial literacy for women from disadvantaged backgrounds. My third, Building Empires from Ashes, was about strategic life planning and long-term goal setting. All 3 were bestsellers. All 3 spawned speaking tours and TED Talks and consulting opportunities. I became somewhat famous in certain circles. Not celebrity famous, but known, respected. People started calling me an advocate, a voice for the forgotten. It felt surreal sometimes. In my previous life, I'd died unknown and unmourned. In this life, I was being asked to speak at conferences and appear on podcasts and consult with nonprofits. But I never forgot where I came from. Never forgot that scared 14-year-old who'd woken up with a second chance and a burning determination to never be powerless again. That girl was still inside me. She always would be. And she kept me honest, kept me focused on what mattered. I'm 27 now. It's Sunday afternoon, and I'm sitting in the renovated sitting room where I first met my grandmother, working on my 4th book. This one is different. This one is fiction. It's about a girl who dies and gets a second chance, who comes back with knowledge of the future and uses it to reclaim everything that was stolen from her. I'm calling it The Rebirth. My editor thinks it will be my biggest success yet. People love a good revenge story, she said during our last meeting, especially when the revenge is justified. But it's not really about revenge, not anymore. It's about reclamation, about taking back your own narrative from people who tried to write you out of existence. It's about the radical act of believing you deserve good things, even when everyone who's supposed to love you says otherwise. It's about second chances and what we do with them. As I write, my phone buzzes. A text from my partner. "Don't forget dinner reservations at 7. I love you." I smile and text back. "I'll be ready. Love you too." This is my life now. This simple moment of being loved and remembered and valued. In my previous life, I'd have given anything for someone to remember I existed, to check in on me, to make plans that included me. In this life, I'm surrounded by people who do exactly that. My partner, my friends, my colleagues at the foundation, the young women I mentor through my scholarship program. I built a family from scratch, a chosen family, a family that shows up, and it's better than any biological family could have been. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been reborn, if I'd just died in that hospital bed and that was the end. Would anyone have come to my funeral? Would my mother have felt even a flicker of guilt? Would Chelsea have posted a sad Instagram story for the sympathy likes? Probably not. They'd have moved on quickly, relieved to have one less complication in their lives. But I did get a second chance. Against all logic and reason, I woke up 14 years old again, with all my memories intact. Some people might have used that chance for pure revenge, might have spent every moment plotting their family's destruction. I chose differently. Yes, I protected myself. Yes, I documented the abuse and prepared for the legal battles I knew were coming. Yes, I made strategic decisions to ensure my mother could never steal from me again. But more than that, I chose to build something positive, to take the pain of my previous life and transform it into purpose. The Harrington Foundation has helped over 10,000 young people escape abusive situations. My scholarship program has sent hundreds of women to college. My books have reached millions of readers and helped countless people recognize and escape their own cycles of neglect. That's my real revenge. Living so well, helping so many people, building something so meaningful that my mother's abandonment becomes irrelevant. She tried to make me nothing. I made myself everything she said I couldn't be. And I did it without becoming like her. I didn't perpetuate the cycle of cruelty. I broke it. That's the victory I'm most proud of. It's been 4 years since my mother last tried to contact me. I know from my private investigator's periodic updates that she's still struggling financially. She works 2 jobs now, barely making ends meet. Chelsea got out of prison last year and moved in with her. They share a cramped apartment in a bad neighborhood. Sometimes I imagine what would happen if I helped them, if I paid off their debts, bought them a house, made all their problems disappear with a few strategic wire transfers. It would be so easy. I could do it without even noticing the dent in my accounts. But I don't. Not because I'm cruel, but because they need to face the consequences of their choices, because helping them would just enable the same patterns that destroyed both my lives. My mother needs to understand that she can't neglect her daughter for 18 years and then expect that daughter to rescue her. Chelsea needs to learn that being pretty and popular doesn't entitle you to other people's money. They made their choices. Now they're living with them. I made my choices too, and I'm living with them as well. The difference is my choices led to success, fulfillment, and genuine happiness. Theirs led to bankruptcy, imprisonment, and isolation. That's not my fault. That's not my responsibility to fix. I've forgiven them, in my way. Not because they deserve forgiveness. They haven't earned it, haven't even asked for it sincerely. But because holding on to anger was poisoning me. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen, or that we can be a family now. It just means I've stopped letting them take up space in my head and heart. I've evicted them from my emotional landscape. They're just people now. People I used to know who hurt me, who I've moved on from. Nothing more. Next month, I'm giving the keynote speech at a conference for social workers and family therapists. The topic is recognizing and intervening in cases of sibling favoritism and parental neglect. I'm going to tell my story, the real story, minus the rebirth aspect. I'm going to talk about how neglect doesn't always look like bruises and cigarette burns. Sometimes it looks like a child who's always excluded from family vacations. Sometimes it looks like a teenager who works 3 jobs because her parents won't help with college costs while funding her siblings' entire education. Sometimes it looks like a young woman dying alone in a hospital because her family couldn't be bothered to answer the phone. I'm going to show them the documentation I kept. The photos of Christmas mornings where my sister opened presents while I got a gift card. The texts I sent begging for help that went unanswered. The diary entries of a child desperately trying to understand why her mother didn't love her. And I'm going to tell them what saved me. One person who saw my worth. One grandmother who believed in me and gave me the tools to save myself. You can't fix every family, I'll tell them. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a child is help them understand that their family's failure to love them isn't their fault and give them the resources to build a better life without those people. It's a controversial message. Some people believe family should always come first, that blood is thicker than water, that parents deserve respect no matter what. I used to believe that too. In my first life, I kept trying to earn my mother's love right up until the day I died. But the full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we're born into. I chose my grandmother in those 6 weeks before she died. I chose my friends, my partner, my mentors. I chose the young women I mentor through my foundation. They chose me back. That's what family really means. I'm working on establishing a long-term care facility for elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. It's going to be called Mary Ann's House after my grandmother. Too many older people die alone, rejected by children who can't be bothered to visit, who are just waiting for the inheritance. I want to create a place where they can live with dignity, surrounded by people who actually care about them. The facility will also serve as an intergenerational mentorship hub. Young people from my scholarship program will be able to volunteer there, connecting with elders who have wisdom to share. Creating the family bonds that biology failed to provide for both groups. It's an ambitious project. It's going to cost about $50 million to build and endow. I don't care. This is what money is for. This is what power is for. Building something that outlasts you, creating change that ripples forward through generations. My mother hoarded every penny, spent it on status symbols and attempts to buy her way into higher social circles. I'm spending mine on making sure other people don't suffer the way I did. That's the difference between us. She saw wealth as a trophy to display. I see it as a tool to build with. She saw other people as resources to exploit. I see them as human beings deserving of dignity and support. She spent her entire life climbing over others to get ahead. I've spent my second life reaching back to pull others up, and you know what? My way is better. Not just morally, though it is that, but practically, strategically. In terms of pure life satisfaction, I wake up every day knowing I'm making a difference, knowing that my existence matters to people beyond what I can provide for them, knowing that I'm loved for who I am, not what I have. My mother wakes up every day resenting the world for not giving her what she thinks she deserves. Which one of us has the better life? I received a letter last week from one of my scholarship recipients. Her name is Maria. She's 22, just graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science. She grew up in foster care after her parents abandoned her when she was 12. Dear Ms. Harrington, the letter began, I don't know how to thank you for changing my life. Before your scholarship, I was working 3 jobs and taking community college classes whenever I could afford them. I'd resigned myself to maybe finishing my degree by the time I was 30, if I was lucky. Your scholarship didn't just pay for my education. It gave me time. Time to study, to intern, to build my skills without constantly worrying about rent and food. Time to become the person I always knew I could be, if only I had a chance. I just accepted a job at Google. 6-figure salary, full benefits, stock options. I'm going to be okay now, more than okay. I'm going to be successful. But more importantly, I'm going to pay it forward. I'm starting a nonprofit to help other foster kids access technology education. And I'm donating 10% of my salary to your foundation. You saved me, and now I'm going to save others. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me my second chance. With this infinite gratitude, Maria. I cried when I read that letter, because that's it. That's exactly it. That's the point of everything I've built, everything I've done with my second chance. Maria is going to help hundreds of kids. Those kids will help thousands more. The ripple effect of one scholarship, one act of belief will spread out infinitely. That's legacy, not money in a bank account, but lives changed, futures built, hope restored. My mother's legacy is 2 estranged daughters and a trail of burned relationships. Mine is an army of young people who were told they were nothing and proved the world wrong. I know which one I'd rather have. It's late now, almost midnight. I should sleep, but I'm sitting here in my grandmother's sitting room, my sitting room, thinking about everything that's happened. 2 lives, one that ended in tragedy, one that's still being written. Same soul, same person, but completely different outcomes. The difference wasn't luck, though that played a part. The difference wasn't even the inheritance, though that helped. The difference was choice. In my first life, I chose to keep trying to earn love from people who would never give it. I chose to make myself smaller, quieter, less inconvenient. I chose to accept the crumbs they threw me and be grateful for them. In my second life, I chose differently. I chose to believe I deserved better. I chose to fight for what was mine. I chose to build something new rather than trying to fix something broken. I chose myself. That's the message I want to leave with the world when I'm finally done. Choose yourself. Not in a selfish way, not in a way that hurts others or climbs over people, but in a way that says, I matter. My life matters. My happiness matters. And I won't accept less than I deserve just because other people are comfortable with me having less. Choose yourself. Build your own family. Create your own success. Write your own story. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for approval. Don't wait for the people who should have loved you to finally see your worth. See your own worth. That's enough. That's everything. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with the architect to finalize plans for Marianne's house. Next week, I'm having lunch with 5 scholarship recipients who are starting their own nonprofits. Next month, I'm giving that keynote speech and probably making a lot of traditionalists angry with my message about chosen family. Next year, I'm publishing The Rebirth and probably starting a conversation about how we tell stories about second chances. In 5 years, I'll be 32. I'll probably have accomplished more than I've even imagined yet. Helped more people, built more programs, created more change. In 10 years, I'll be 37. Who knows what the world will look like then? What I'll have built, what impact I'll have made. But I do know one thing. I'll never again be the girl dying alone in a hospital bed, waiting for a call that never comes. I'll never again be forgotten, abandoned, erased. Because I've made myself unforgettable. Not through force or manipulation or desperation, but through authentic excellence. Through genuine impact. Through the simple, radical act of living well despite everything that was done to me. They forgot to pick me up from the hospital, but I picked myself up. I saved myself. And then I spent the rest of my life saving others. That's my story. That's my revenge. That's my triumph. Not that I destroyed my abusers, though they destroyed themselves pretty effectively without my help, but that I refused to let them destroy me. I took my pain and transformed it into purpose. I took my abandonment and transformed it into advocacy. I took my death and transformed it into rebirth. And I built an empire from the ashes of the life they tried to burn down. That's power. Real power. The kind that can't be taken away. The kind that changes the world. I get up from my desk and walk to the window. The brownstone looks out over a quiet street in the Upper East Side, trees lining the sidewalk, streetlights casting warm pools of light. This is my home, my sanctuary, my headquarters for changing the world. My grandmother's gift wasn't just the money or the property. It was the belief that I could be someone, that I deserved to be someone. She saw me when everyone else looked through me, and that sight, that simple act of recognition, saved my life, both times. I press my hand to the window glass, cool against my palm, and I make a promise to the 14-year-old girl I used to be, the one who woke up in a child's bedroom with a second chance and no idea how to use it. I won't waste this. I won't forget what we survived. I won't stop fighting until everyone who's been forgotten gets their chance to be seen. That's my vow, my mission, my purpose. And I'll spend every day of this second life keeping it. They forgot to pick me up from the hospital. After Rebirth, I never called for a ride. I built my own road instead, and it's been a beautiful journey.